Coming up, Mike Gundy to Tennessee rumors are heating up, and they include a pretty big surprise. We'll tell you all about it next, right here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Late breaking news as we begin the show today. That's Mike Johnson. I'm Brandon Adams. It's great to have with us here on AT&T SEC Country Live. I'll remind you here, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Let's dive into item number one on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10. Let's get right to the news as we understand it right now, is that Mike Gundy has emerged as a strong candidate to become the next coach at Tennessee. Apparently a meeting taking place today in somewhere in the Big 12 area. We've heard Stillwater, we've heard Dallas, we've heard a couple spots here. But one way or another, Tennessee officials apparently meeting with Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State coach. Mike, let me show you some of what's been said here online leading up to this. Then I'm going to read you a few more tweets coming from some of the big-name newsmakers in the world of college football. Let me start with this, one of the first reports out today in terms of what's going on. This coming from the official Cowboy site from SB Nation, that Oklahoma State Cowboys, I should say, that Tennessee was willing to double Mike Gundy's salary of $4.2 million. According to multiple reports, that's what he was making at Oklahoma State, willing to double to $8.4 million. And they say that $8.4 would have made Gundy the third highest paid coach in college football. So that coming from the SB Nation side, they're connected to Oklahoma State, covering the Cowboys. Chris Lowe from ESPN had also tweeted this a little earlier today. We'll show you this news from Chris Lowe. The Tennessee reps have had phone conversations with Gundy about the Vols head coaching job. Vols have also talked to Gundy in 2013. Oklahoma State is home for Gundy. Getting him away from his alma mater would be hard. I guess for $8.4 million, maybe it becomes a little easier at that point in time. What do you make of all of this going on with Tennessee? Throwing the Hail Mary here, swinging the haymaker, whatever, an analogy or a metaphor you want to use in terms of after being embarrassed by the Greg Schiano situation on Sunday, potentially striking back in a big way with a coach that I would think would almost universally be praised as a good hire.
Yeah, I think this is the last-ditch effort from John Curry when you look at his back being against the wall and these boosters. I mean, really, the fate of this program kind of being against the wall right now, everybody kind of coming up off that pocketbook and saying, you know what, if Schiano is the best we can do, let's see if we can throw $8.4 million at a guy like Mike Gundy and see if we can uproot him. I don't know who else they call it. I don't know if you can throw Mike Leach or Chris Peterson or anybody like that, in amongst these names. But what we have right now is a program that understands they have to make a splash hire or a lot of jobs will be out of business. And I think that John Curry is displaying that. I think if you're going to get a guy away from his alma mater where he's been there, 13, 14, 15 years, that's the kind of money you're going to have to pay. And I think Tennessee fans would be happy about it.
All right, let me also go to Brett McMurphy, who for a long time worked for ESPN, now kind of out on his own, but still breaking news when it comes to college football. Let me read you a couple of things that he's tweeted within the last few minutes here. Sources among the conversations between Tennessee and Mike Gundy before today, including a call from Peyton Manning making a pitch for Gundy to come to Tennessee. So Manning, we've kind of wondered how much involvement do the big names in Knoxville, like Peyton Manning, like Philip Fulmer, how much involvement do they have in what's going on here in this situation? Well, at least in the Gundy instance, a pretty big name coach, Peyton Manning may be kind of paving the way for Gundy to Knoxville here, if it indeed does go down.
Listen, I think it's all hands on deck right now when you're the Tennessee football program. I think that Peyton Manning probably asked his way into this. I think that Philip Fulmer is more than willing to do his part in this coaching search, and I think this is what you need. The backlash that Tennessee's fan base gave the athletic department and then the backlash that the fan base got from national media members, I think has been a big deal. I think it's awakened a lot of people to a lot of different scenarios that are going on in and around that program, and I think that it's all hands on deck now.
Something else that Brett McMurphy tweets is probably worth mentioning, and this is a little bit of a surprise if it's true. While reporting the Mike Gundy and Tennessee story, McMurphy writes, and this is just from less than 20 minutes ago, I've confirmed Florida officials had discussions with Gundy. Former Oklahoma State coach Pat Jones said Monday that Florida had offered Gundy the job before hiring Dan Mullen. Are you buying that? That by my count, Mullen would become the fourth choice for the Florida job after Chip Kelly, after Scott Frost, and now after at least Mike Gundy? Does that make sense to you?
I don't know that he was offered the job. I think that kind of leaves a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I think that obviously you're going to have conversations with him. I think that anytime you have an open coaching positions at a place like Florida, you're going to call as many candidates as you possibly can. Were the numbers just not right? Were they not offering $8.4 million? I doubt they were. So maybe they fall back on to Dan Mullen as kind of their backup plan. But I think Florida's all the better for it. I think that Mullen's probably a better coach for the scenario than Mike Gundy would have been.
James Crump says, I don't see Gundy going to Tennessee. There was an interesting moment that happened with Gundy a couple of weeks ago. It has been thought that Gundy, and the most high-profile booster, really maybe in all of college athletics, certainly for Oklahoma State, is T. Boone Pickens, the oil magnate. It's been thought that T. Boone Pickens and Gundy were not the closest in terms of the relationship, but Gundy did tweet out some thanks and congratulations after Oklahoma State played a good game against Oklahoma, ultimately losing to the Sooners, but T. Boone Pickens still had some nice things to say about Mike Gundy after that. There was some belief that maybe that was a mending of the fences between Pickens and Gundy, but at one point, the souring relationship with the biggest booster at Oklahoma State was considered one of the reasons why Mike Gundy might leave.
Well, yeah, and I can see it from the opposite perspective, too. I mean, you're talking about T. Boone Pickens, who has poured millions and tens of millions into this program. And listen, Oklahoma State, for everything they've done well, they haven't won a Big 12 conference title here in about 6 or 7 years. So Mike Gundy's been a very good coach for them. I think when you look at his record, 113-53 overall since he's taken that job at Oklahoma State. But I think the question he asks himself in the mirror when he's choosing between jobs like Oklahoma State and Tennessee has he hit his ceiling at a place like Oklahoma State? Is his message still being heard? I think that's going to be something he'll mull over this week.
Steve Weaver says the mullet in Tennessee would make sense, obviously referencing the hairstyle. You saw that on the screen a moment ago from Mike Gundy. James Wedge Sullivan also says his mullet's going to be right there at home in Tennessee. I actually have a different take on this. I'm a big believer that a lot of what they tolerate out west, we just don't put up in the SEC. You got Mike Leach talking about pirates and stuff like that. That stuff is not going to fly down here in the SEC. We don't want crazy, kooky coaches. The same thing for Mike Gundy. Yeah, he may look like some Tennessee fans and look like a large, portion of the SEC in terms of his kind of relaxed demeanor here, but there is still something we expect from our coaches. We expect them to sort of look presidential, the buttoned-up CEO type stuff here. We expect those guys to have a certain level of decorum, and I don't know that Gundy's look is right for the SEC. Now, people say, well, if he wins, that's all that matters. But there's a process in place before you win.
Yeah.
And before you win, are Tennessee fans going to allow this caricature to stand down there on their sideline? I actually think the mullet's a problem in the SEC, even if some of the fans have the mullet.
Well, listen, you said it first. If you win in the SEC, you smooth over everything else. And listen, we didn't see the mullet first off when Mike Gundy went to Oklahoma State, and Mike Leach wasn't saying some of the crazy things at Washington State when he was first hired there. I think you have to win first, and then you can do things like that. But from all indications I've ever heard around college football, Mike Gundy can win at Tennessee. And so I think that if he reels off 8, 9, 10 wins there in year one, guess what? Tennessee fans are going to say you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, you can bring a boat to practice or a boat to the game on game day. It doesn't matter. As long as he wins at Tennessee, their fans are going to accept him for whatever he does.
Well, David Melton's an example of that. He's a big Tennessee fan. He says that Mike Gundy would be a great hire. I don't care how he looks. And, I'd be careful about this in that, there was this universal agreement that Greg Schiano was going to be a terrible hire. Maybe he would have been, but there's never unanimous, correct decisions made by the public. The same way the opposite reaction would be true here about Mike Gundy. The truth somewhere in the middle on Gundy here as well. I'd be careful bringing in a guy whose personality fits a lot better in the West than it does the Southeast, whose offense probably fits a lot better within the Big 12 than it does in the Southeast. He would be a good hire for Tennessee. You couldn't knock the hire, but do I think they'd be a better hire than Florida hiring Dan Mullen? I actually don't. I think Mullen, because he knows the SEC, would be the better hire for the two programs.
I completely agree with you. I think that's where I was leaning a minute ago when you said, was Mullen the fourth hire for Florida right there, the fourth guy they looked at? And I'm with you. For every deficiency you point to that maybe Dan Mullen has, and I've pointed out a couple of times that his inconsistencies as a head coach, to me, are a little bit alarming, but he does know the SEC. He knows what it takes to be successful, specifically on defense. I don't know if Mike Gundy really understands that. I don't know if he understands what the SEC defense will bring. He's going to have to bring a great defensive coordinator along with him if he does get the job at Tennessee. I think he can get it done, and I think that Tennessee fans will love his offense, but getting to that championship caliber football team, not just getting back to where you can beat some teams, getting to that championship caliber is going to require some good defenses. I don't know if he has the ability to do that.
Let me do a couple other comments here on this subject, then we'll talk about where these SEC teams are going to be ranked tonight. Robert Downing says, why does everyone think so highly of him? He was an elite coach in the Big 12. How's that going to be different at Tennessee when you got to play Alabama, Georgia, and Florida every year? I mean, there is an element of it to be true that, Oklahoma may be this power program, but actually the recruiting prowess of the SEC powers is actually much greater better than Oklahoma up until the last couple of years. Oklahoma had actually fallen off from its major recruiting prowess. It's actually a little easier to beat Oklahoma than it is to beat some of the teams he's going to be competing with on a yearly basis in the SEC.
I completely agree with you, and I think when you look at his overall record, only 2 years out of the 13 years that he's been at Oklahoma State has he not lost 3 games or more. And so you wonder, how well does that translate? I think the SEC is a little bit deeper in terms of what they present on a weekly basis than the Big 12 is, and Mike Gundy's going to learn that probably the hard way if he does land in Knoxville.
Shannon Burgess says, Coach O doesn't fit the description you were giving, BA. Why not Gundy in Tennessee? Well, here's the thing, Shannon. I'm not so sure a year from now some of y'all LSU fans haven't turned on Ed Orgeron too here. Now, I mean that. Now, obviously, Orgeron kind of is a little different than Gundy in that while he may be different than a lot of SEC coaches, he's very, very much, like what folks from Louisiana are going to like. His voice sounds similar there. But there's some quirkiness to Orgeron's personality that works against him if things go south. What you don't want is to be easily caricatured. I mean, any politician who's ever seen his or her likeness splashed all over Saturday Night Live will tell you that once you can become easily caricatured, it's a lot easier to diminish and dismiss you. And that's a factor on the recruiting trail. You don't want to be a Saturday Night Live parody waiting to happen. Long hair, Cajun growl voice, whatever. If you can be easily mocked, you will be mocked by opposing fans and by negative recruiting.
And I also I feel like there's a sense at LSU that Ed Orgeron's kind of a homegrown type of guy, that he is an LSU person. You know what I mean? He has that personality that a lot of LSU fans have. Mike Gundy's not really going to be seen that way right off the bat at Tennessee. He's going to come from Oklahoma State. That's his alma mater. He's from Oklahoma. So kind of transferring that personality to Tennessee is a little bit more of an uphill battle than Ed Orgeron faced at LSU.
Wilson Georgia says, wow, what in the hell does how he looks have to do with coaching? I'm not a Vols fan, but damn. Look, here's the thing. I'm not telling you can draw a line between how he looks and how he coaches, but you got to notice that almost every coach wears their hair the same way, sort of dresses the same way. There is a look associated with coaching, right or wrong. There is a look that kind of comes, to the forefront with how a coach chooses to present themselves. Watch these guys at SEC Media Days. All have suits, very much kind of put together the same way. There is a look that coaches bring to the table.
Well, and I do think it's fair currently to kind of judge whether or not the Tennessee fans will accept the next head coaching candidate. I mean, we've already seen a ton of backlash from some of the fans that on the peripheral don't, seem to like one of the candidates before. So let's be honest. We can ask questions about it.
That is a good point. It's a question worth asking how Tennessee fans are going to respond, because we've shown they will respond.
Yes, they will respond in one way or another, whether you like it or not.
All right, absolutely. Let's move on here. Item number 2 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10. By the way, we'll have more of the coaching stuff, including your comments at the comment section all day long here. But we do have college football playoff rankings that come out tonight. We'll be with you at 7 p.m. tonight on the SEC Country Facebook page. Hope you'll join us for that, for Academy Sports and Outdoors Path to Playoff. But how do you see tonight shaking out? There's an element of me that thinks that tonight will be the least satisfying of all the playoff rankings, because this truly won't mean anything, because we're only a few days away from the actual real rankings coming out. For instance, I don't think we learned anything about Alabama and Ohio State tonight, where they're ranked in relationship to each other. I don't think as a clue or a tip-off. I guess I'm kind of interested to see how high Auburn does move up in this thing. But even Georgia, while it's expected to move up from number 7, I don't know that how far it climbs tonight really matters all that much, given that Auburn and Georgia about to play each other, and I don't think anyone would deny that's a play-in game for the college football playoff.
It definitely is, and I don't mean this in any offense to Georgia fans. I mean this more in offense to the college football playoff committee. They're going to use Georgia right now as a chess piece. They're a separator right now, because they know it's a win and you're in mentality. Losing, you're probably out if you're Georgia. So what the college football playoff committee, it's kind of a divider. Where will Alabama land? Somewhere on the other side, in my opinion, from Ohio State, and Georgia's stuck right there in the middle. I don't know where you put Wisconsin and Auburn. My top 4 right now is Clemson, Oklahoma, Auburn, Wisconsin, just because of the strength of Auburn's wins. But my 5, 6, 7, 8, Alabama, Georgia, Miami, and Ohio State. I don't know how high Ohio State rises. I think that'll have a lot to do with where they land next week if they do beat Wisconsin. But right now, they're still at 8 for me.
I think that Alabama's going to be ranked ahead of Ohio State tonight. And also, it's one of those deals where, as we said before, I don't think there's any kind of predictor of how Sunday is going to go, because Ohio State's going to get the benefit of another game, which is the only thing the committee needs to make whatever decision it wants to make. I don't see Alabama falling below Ohio State, even though Ohio State and Alabama is going to be this great comparison that goes on after the Big Ten championship, assuming the Buckeyes win it, and I believe they're going to win it handily.
Well, I don't think there's any secret that Alabama probably tonight will be ranked ahead of Ohio State, but how close is it? Are we talking about a 5th-ranked Alabama team and an 8th-ranked Ohio State, or are we talking about a 6th-ranked Alabama team and 7th-ranked Ohio State? I think that's the one thing to pay attention to. How close are these things? And honestly, what are we going to hear tonight on the ranking show about how they divided the two squads?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm also speaking of that, talking about the closeness of these schools. How high? I told you this in yesterday's show. I believe that one of the stories, and I'm kicking myself for not paying attention to this before now. I think the Pac-12 is still in this thing.
Yeah,
I think by virtue of the Stanford win against Notre Dame, USC, who I assume will beat Stanford on Friday night, that really is a springboard for them. Does the committee kind of foreshadow that a bit by ranking both Stanford and USC a good bit higher tonight, kind of indicating that one of those two teams is in the mix where an Oklahoma defaulter? Because it all kind of hinges on Oklahoma's loss here.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma loses, who stands to benefit? Alabama fans say it's their program. Let's see what they do to the Pac-12 tonight to see if they emerge in that discussion.
I completely agree. USC, to me, right now is a little bit of the wild card. When you look at the two losses they've had, Washington State and Notre Dame, two pretty quality losses. I mean, they lost to Washington State on a Friday night. A lot of crazy things have happened since that game, and you got to admit that USC probably sitting right there around number 10, playing I think number 22 or number 3 Stanford this weekend. That could launch them into the discussion. Now, I think that if everybody else ahead of them obviously takes care of business, they'd be on the outside looking in. But once you start matching USC up with Alabama, that's a conversation to have in and of itself.
Rick Keene says Wisconsin couldn't beat any of the top 5. Ohio State's been blown out twice. That's what kept Penn State out last year. And, you know how I feel about this. I've told you before. Yeah. I'm the biggest SEC homer in the world. I actually sympathize with Rick, who's frustrated about what he's hearing national media folks tell you about the Big Ten. I don't want to be an echo chamber for that kind of information because I want to be on Rick's side on this and all the other SEC fans who say, how in the world could you reward this, this collection of mediocrities in the Big Ten? The fact of the matter is, I think the committee is going to keep the Big Ten a part of this. I believe, and I don't want this to be true, I'm an SEC homer. I believe the Big Ten title game, whether you like it or not, is a play-in game for the
Well, I disagree, and we disagreed on yesterday's show because I look at what happened last year as far as the Big Ten goes. They jumped Ohio State over the eventual Big Ten champion and Penn State that had 2 losses, just like Ohio State will this year. And then Ohio State gets blown out, against Clemson in that matchup there on New Year's Day. And I think that still plays in the back of the head of a lot of those committee members. I think they said, you know what, we made this mistake one time. Should we make it again? I'm not sure. Ohio State, to me, probably doesn't get the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion.
Hey, can I change the subject real quick? Because JT Talent's got a great comment in the comment section. JT says, would you take Mike Norvell, the Memphis coach, over Mike Gundy? Boy, at the right job, it's an interesting thing to think about because it's a lot less money. And here's the thing you got to realize. If the reports out there are true about Gundy taking the $8 million to come to Tennessee, there is no free lunch here. There is a risk associated with paying a coach that much because guess what? The buyout is that amount times however many years you got to buy him out for. It is not a guarantee that any coach comes in as successful, especially in his first 3 or 4 years. And SEC fans are impatient in those first 3 or 4 years. So if I had a chance to get a Norvell cheaper, is that a better hire? To a certain degree, it might be. It's tough for Tennessee to make a riskier hire like that because Norvell comes with risk because he's got a short tenure as a head coach. But Norvell at a place like Arkansas, do I think that Arkansas is in a better position with Mike Norvell than Tennessee might be with Mike Gundy? There's an argument to be made that could be the case.
I would expect Arkansas to fully go after a Mike Norvell. And you're right, the sample size is small. I mean, he's taken over after Justin Fuentes there at Memphis. He's done some great things. I don't think anybody can question what his on-the-field coaching has been like this year. I think that's why he's getting mentioned for so many of these jobs. But what really in the long run is Mike Norvell as a recruiter? I think that's a fair question to ask as well. I still think Mike Gundy's the better coach at Tennessee. I think that he has the brighter future. I think that you can look at what he's done in the Big 12, ask questions about it, but let's be honest right now. His track record is 10 times as long as Mike Norvell is. I think he just has to find the right DC.
Let me go back to the rankings here for a moment because I want to ask you a different kind of question. James Crump says, to me, I disagree about the Big Ten being a win and you're in. He says Wisconsin wins and they're in. Ohio State needs a win and help. A lot of people really reflect James' opinion on this. Yeah. Most people don't agree with me when I say it's win and you're in, but I really do believe I'm right about this. So my question is, what happens if I am right? How much of a perception problem does the committee have then that it's just going to let Ohio State in every single year? Well, let them in 2014 after they had a bad loss to Virginia Tech. Let them in 2016 when they weren't even conference champion. Let them in this year because they are conference champion. I mean, how big of a perception problem is it with the James Crumps of the world if Ohio State gets the benefit of the doubt for a third time?
Well, I think the perception is everything about the committee right now. And just to rewind, we've kind of juggled back and forth between Ohio State with the 2 losses and Alabama with the 1. And your point to this for a while now has been that there's people are tired of the SEC. They're tired of Alabama being on top. They want new blood in it. I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way about Ohio State.
You're right.
I mean, there's a lot of people. And by the way, Alabama in the last couple of years have given you great national title games. One on the winning side, one on the losing side. Ohio State has not done that for a couple of years. And that's kind of why I point to the fact that Ohio State, to me, doesn't get the benefit of the doubt this year for a lot of the same reasons you say Alabama might.
Let's talk about the Florida Gators. You're item number 3 in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. We showed you video yesterday of Dan Mullen's plane landing there in Gainesville. He's gator chopping. Everybody's all smiles.
He was feeling good.
Yeah, everybody's all happy about that. You see him there getting off the plane. You watch him do the chop. He comes out of the plane doing the chop. Scott Strickland there to give him the clap and the hug. And listen, this is the happiest day of a coach's life when he's greeted like this. He's everybody's happy, everybody's excited. You see the family coming with him as well. Well, Mullen had a chance to meet with the media yesterday, his opening press conference, and early on in that press conference, took a moment to thank one of the big names in the room. And Gators fans like hearing Dan Mullen say such nice things about one of the guys that got the Florida program started, Steve Spurrier. Take a listen.
It's great to see Coach Spurrier. And might not know this, as a young coach, started coaching, and always grew up a huge fan, and was always a huge Florida Gator fan. And so what do you do if you're a Florida Gator fan and you're going to start coaching? You start wearing the visor. So I guess everybody sees me with my visor on. I don't know if I wear it quite as stylishly as Coach did. I've also been known to throw one of them every once in a while out there, but that's really the reason I started doing that in the first place. And it's unbelievable to be here, to think that I'm tasked with the responsibility of carrying on with the traditions that he has started and so many of the former players started here, that he built here as a coach.
So for me, these comments teeter on the brink of being patronizing, but the fact that Mullen did work at Florida actually makes them work here. There's this thing of, boy, I tell you what, you were my favorite coach growing up, Coach. Good to have you in the room here. That just sort of sounds like something you're supposed to say, but the fact that Mullen does have those ties to Gainesville, did have success as an offensive coordinator, it made that comment and really virtually everything yesterday work. I mean, it's easy to win a press conference, but for the most part, I thought Mullen won his.
Yeah, by the way, I thought Jim McElwain had one of the best opening pressers we've ever seen when he was introduced as a coach 3 years ago down there in Florida. But I'm with you. I thought Dan Mullen won the press conference. He did have a little bit of slip up in there that I noticed that he did say the champions of life at one point, which I thought's a very dangerous thing as a head coach of the Florida Gators. You don't want to go down that road much. But I thought everything he said was right on cue. I thought him kind of nodding towards Steve Spurrier was a good thing. That, listen, a lot of Florida people pointed to the fact that they wanted a Florida guy. Well, guess what? You got him. I don't know if he was number 3 or number 4 or number 5 on the list, but Dan Mullen's going to be a good fit down at Florida.
Greg Steele says it's the other Florida school that does the chop. Did I say chop? I meant to say chomp. Sometimes I don't enunciate that M correctly. I meant to say the Gator chomp, and I'm curious what Greg Steele and others think about the Dan Mullen hire, because I said this yesterday, and y'all know if you watch regularly, I'm a Georgia guy. I'll put it out there. I don't want Florida to have a good coach, but I do believe that Dan Mullen is one.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think Mullen's early years are going to be tough, because I do think that Jim McElwain has left him a mess from a talent standpoint, from a player discipline standpoint. We don't know yet about the felony charge players, how many of them get to come back, what's the status there. I think the athletic department of Florida's got some real issues it's got to deal with. Do you want to be a program like the rest of the SEC that makes a full commitment to football, or do you want to pretend that swimming matters? I mean, I think that you've got a lot of things to think about if you're Florida here, but the one thing I don't deny is that Mullen's a good coach.
Yeah, I completely agree with you too. And we can talk about, we talked a ton last week about Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
I mean, Chip Kelly to me would have been the slam dunk hire. He moves on to UCLA. I don't want to call Dan Mullen a poor man's Chip Kelly, because I think it's a little bit of a slap in the face. I think more of Dan Mullen than that statement really implies. But this was kind of a backup plan for Florida, and you move past Scott Frost, who obviously has his eyes on the Nebraska job, and I think you've fallen into kind of a good situation if you're Scott Strickland. If you're a Florida fan right now, it's like, hey, you know what? We might not have got our first guy or maybe even our second guy, but Dan Mullen knows the SEC, and I think there's something to be said for a guy that's not going to get blindsided about anything he's going to see. He's not going to come in there and then all of a sudden this job's going to be too big for him. He is ready for this step in his coaching life.
Gary Gilsano, who is admittedly a Georgia fan, weighs in the comment section to say, Mike or BA, let's be honest, what kind of a leash does Mullen have when Florida won the East the last 2 times with Jim McElwain? He still got canned. I do think this is a fair question that the commenter brings up there. And honestly, I'm a big believer. This is just my opinion, so you can do with this whatever you will. When you hear about Scott Frost and Chip Kelly being the choices for Florida above Dan Mullen, I don't actually believe that's true. The same way that I don't believe what Brett McMurphy said about Mike Gundy being someone that got the Florida job offer before Dan Mullen got. I don't believe that's true either. I think there's a chance that Mullen had to be convinced that one of the reasons why they were going down the road of these other coaches, because I do take Mullen at his word of, originally that maybe he did view this as the job that he didn't have to take. And maybe there were some concerns about taking this job because of what the commenter just said, that, hey, Jim McElwain got fired after winning the East 2 years in a row. Do you think Mullen had to be convinced to take the job? I'm not even sure that matters, but do you think he had to be convinced?
Probably a little bit, but if you're going to judge him getting off the plane and doing the Gator Chomp and tweeting out pictures and hugging Scott Strickland. By the way, did you see his wife hug Scott Strickland like it was a long lost pen pal? I mean they embraced after the plane flight right there, and she looked like she had just gotten home. I think the leash is probably similar to Jim McElwain's, though, and it's not so much about the wins, in my opinion. And I think Florida fans will echo this same sentiment. It's about what does your team look like. There were so many times, listen, Jim McElwain was getting the wins, and I kind of point to the Kentucky win this year, the Tennessee win this year as, hey, yes, you got the win on paper, but how bad did your team look at times? It looked like a team that was completely inept on the offensive side of the ball. I think as long as Dan Mullen can get that team to looking like they even belong in the SEC East, then his leash will be 3 or 4 years.
Adam Zappia, who's a Florida fan, says that Mullen was my first pick the whole time. Well, he got his wish, and I think I understand where you'd come from on that. He is an experienced SEC coach. Michael Winkle says, you said, talking to me, that Dan Mullen wouldn't go to Florida, you dirty flip-flopper. Listen, it's not me flip-flopping. It's the sources close to Mullen who said he wasn't coming to Florida. I said Mullen would be a good hire all along. It was the people close to Mullen who said he wasn't coming. I'm not talking to Mullen every day, but people who did thought he wasn't taking this job.
Yeah, that's what's been so interesting about this entire thing is how many people did we hear from Mississippi State side of it that said, he's completely happy at Starkville. He's never going to leave Starkville. He loves the program he's built down there. And then, it hits you fast. The SEC comes at you fast where all of a sudden you turn on the news and he's getting off the plane there in Gainesville. Nobody knows what Dan Mullen, nobody knows what Mike Gundy's going to do. I think it's a lot of open questions. You can point to Jimbo Fisher as being another one. Sometimes these guys just feel like the timing is right. It takes a lot to uproot your family from one place and move them to a completely different city. But, Dan Mullen obviously felt like now's the time.
Corey Culbertson said, any updates on Mike Gundy? That is a good point. Let's make sure we're watching the Gundy stuff. Yeah. If we hear anything, we'll jump in here with you on that. As a matter of fact, I'll get ready to pull some of that up right now. We'll keep watching that here today on AT&T SEC Country Live and talk to you all about it. Before that, though, let me remind you that is Mike Johnson. My name's Brandon Adams. It's great to have you with us here today on AT&T SEC Country Live. We talk about all these coaching rumors and where all of this is heading next. Of course, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless. DirecTV, they'll help you stay connected all season long. And you know what? Been talking so much to folks here over the last day or so about what's going to happen this Friday. People really excited about our big SEC Country event as we do AT&T SEC Country Live, truly live and in person at the Hooters downtown Peachtree Street starting at 7 p.m. That's a special time for us. Also special day. We normally only do the show Monday through Thursdays. We are doing a special show this Friday, 7 p.m. You want to talk about a chance to hang out with Georgia fans in Atlanta for the big game the next day, Auburn fans, and really any kind of SEC fan who can get to Atlanta. It's going to be a great, great night. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, not only that, but getting to hang out with some of the employees there at the local Hooters establishment. Also kind of a little plus to that whole scenario. So I look forward to seeing everybody.
There is also that there as well. And by the way, speaking of Hooters, you want a great meal to enjoy some football with this weekend? How about this great offer from Hooters? $5 off your online to-go order of $25 or more when you use the promo code SEC Fans. Now, it is online only and it is to-go only, but the deal speaks for itself. $5 off your order of $25 or more. Use the promo code SEC Fans and you'll have a great meal. I love those Hooters wings to watch football with. Really, really fun time. All right, speaking of the SEC Championship, let's talk about that now. Item number 4 in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And I don't know if you're having the same experience that I am, but really, anytime I'm having an off-air conversation with anyone this week and the subject of this game comes up on Saturday, the one question I'm being asked more than any is, what do you think about Carrion Johnson? The running back for Auburn, the Heisman Trophy candidate, a guy who I think should go to New York as a Heisman Trophy finalist at the very least, injured in the game against Alabama. Status has been kind of murky here. So I thought it'd be important for us to kind of deal with that a little bit and talk about what Gus Malzahn had to say about it, including is he going to be able to practice here on this Tuesday when Malzahn speaks to the media. Here is what Malzahn said earlier today.
I think it's going to be a day-to-day deal. You know, he was better yesterday than he was the day before. So we'll see where that goes and, you know, when he's ready to get out there.
Malzahn also asked an interesting question that, you know, because he's a veteran, because he's a good player, would you be okay with playing him if he doesn't practice very much? And I thought that Malzahn gave a pretty interesting answer to that. Here's what he said.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, he's not just a veteran guy. I mean, he's one of the better players in college football right now. And, you know, he's a great competitor, like I said before. And this is a big game, and he'll do what he can. I mean, he'll do what he can.
So I want to hear some more from Gus Malzahn and Carrion Johnson in a moment. Let me ask you about this, though, real quick. I mean, how would you feel, star player, you know how good he is. Are you okay with a guy like that being inserted in the game if he hasn't had much practice time this week? Does Johnson, going into the first Saturday in December, does he need practice?
No, I don't think so. Listen, these guys have been practicing for a long time. Not only just this year. When you talk about the fact that they're in week 14 of the SEC football, the country's football season right now. When you approach this game, Carrion Johnson deserves the benefit of the doubt. This guy has been your bell cow guy for the last few weeks, really most of the season since he did come back from that injury. 1,300 rushing yards, leads the SEC. He's a game changer. And guess what? This is a championship game. I do think it's interesting that Gus Malzahn has these comments because when you hear from Carrion Johnson, Jared Stidham, Trey Matthews, all these guys in and around the program, they say, you know what, there's no way he's not going to play. This guy will be on the field and suited up. I don't care what they have to do. I don't care if they have to put a second set of shoulder pads on the guy. He'll be on the field and making a difference. I think he's a special player. And I understand why all the hoopla around whether or not he'll play, but there's no question in my mind he'll be on the field.
But correct me if I'm wrong, though. It's a lot more common for NFL players to not practice than play than it's for college players, though, right?
Well, it all has to do with the head coach. A lot of head coaches say, you know what, if you don't practice by Thursday, you're not going to get on the field this weekend. I think that there's different scenarios. Right now, when you look at Auburn's running back scenario, that's not the case.
I'm also curious about this, though. You just pretty emphatically said Carrion Johnson to play. I believe that's probably true as well, but, I mean, I will admit, the heap that he went down in on Saturday, I haven't seen that in a lot of football games. After seeing that, what makes you, as a guy that took a lot of these hits and stood shoulder to shoulder with guys like Carrion Johnson, what makes you think that he definitely will play when you saw him respond to the injury the way that he did?
Well, listen, this is because this is a shoulder injury. There's a couple of different ways to approach this type of thing. When you talk about different injuries, if it's an ankle, if it's a knee, and you're a running back, there's a lot of different question marks. When you talk about the injury being an upper body thing, especially for a running back, there's different. You can get lidocaine shots. You can get extra set of pads put on your body. You can do a ton of things to kind of take that pain away. It's too big, in my opinion, way too big of a game. Not only for Auburn right now, but in the career of Carrion Johnson, to think that he won't be on the field.
But when you get into the specifics of what actually is going on here medically, Gus Malzahn doesn't want to talk about any of that. Here he is.
I'm not going to get into being a doctor right now about all that stuff. That sounds like something I'd ask Dr. Andrews, so I hadn't asked him yet. I'll probably ask him Wednesday, and I'll get back with you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. He's probably going to play, but is he effective? I mean, that's the issue, right?
Well, yeah, he's definitely effective. And, in my opinion, he did have 104 rushing yards against Alabama, but 3.3 yards per carry. I don't know if he was the game wrecker against Alabama that he was against Georgia. So maybe the injury has a little bit to deal with, maybe knocking him down a little step.
Yeah.
But when you look at the options that Auburn has right now, and Cam Martin's going to get a ton of looks this weekend, Jared Stidham might run a little more as well. Carrion Johnson is the catalyst for this entire team. So that's what leads me to believe there's no way he won't play.
You mentioned an important name, though. That's Cam Martin, who himself is not completely 100%. Now, I'm assuming that Martin's going to be fine, but in a weird way, Auburn can still be a very potent, powerful offense with Stidham at quarterback and Cam Martin at running back. Martin's a good enough player. He's not as good as Carrion Johnson, but the offense can be fine. In a weird way, I'm almost watching for these Cam Martin updates as much as I'm watching the Carrion Johnson stuff.
Well, you should be, because there's quality depth there. But in my opinion, there's two different guys. When you look at Carrion Johnson out of this Wildcat, when you look at the threat he is in the receiving game out of the backfield, getting catches from Jared Stidham, I think that's what makes him so unique and such a big part of this football team.
I love Tim Rhodes in the comment section, who's giving us the update on the flight leaving Knoxville, Tennessee to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma. Tim, thanks for that information. Dave Chauncey in the comment section also saying that Brett McMurphy's reporting that nothing with Gundy's expected to happen today. I wouldn't expect that you would get the Gundy's going to Tennessee confirmation, but you may get the confirmation that it's not happening. The same way that we saw Florida fly up to New Hampshire, come back without Chip Kelly. Now, maybe that was their plan all along, to leave without Chip Kelly, but one way or another, Chip Kelly didn't get hired, and then after that you started hearing those those he's probably not coming or he may not come thing. You may get bad news if you're a Tennessee fan on Mike Gundy today, but you're probably not getting good news.
Well, yeah, I'm the same way. I kind of look at that, and you know, I think John Curry has to be careful. This kind of makes me nervous for John Curry, honestly, and I'm not so sure he doesn't already deserve to be fired. But if you're floating all these things out there and all this stuff gets out about how
you can't help the flight plan stuff. I mean, this stuff is public.
Well,
anybody can find that.
Right, but we've already heard that they've already maybe met in Dallas. So, I mean, who even knows where that flight's going or for what cause? And I tend to believe some of that stuff, but I'm just saying John Curry has to be extremely careful at this point. That all of a sudden, if you fly back without Mike Gundy, if there really is a plane going and you fly back without him, that's a really bad look right now that this university, frankly, just can't afford to have.
All right, let me move on here to item number 5 on our AT&T SEC Country Life First and 10 list. The other side of the SEC Championship Game story on Saturday is involving the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, yesterday on the program, we played you audio of what Gary Danielson said that Kirby Smart had told him in the build-up to Georgia's game against Kentucky, reflecting back to his team game against Auburn, being unhappy with the officiating. Danielson said, "I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this or not, but he said it anyway." We played it yesterday, but let me play it again.
I'm just going to say it. I don't think it was off the record. You can stop me at any time. When we talked to Kirby Smart following the Auburn game, he felt that Auburn got away with a lot of holds in the secondary against his receivers. He sent in 6 plays to the SEC. He was not happy about what he had happen in that game.
So that was what Gary Danielson said, that he's not sure if he's supposed to say that, but Kirby Smart was unhappy with officiating, thought his receivers were being held. And on my program, Dog Nation Daily, on Monday, Chip Towers, who knows the Georgia Bulldogs about as well as anybody, said on the show that he thought that Kirby Smart probably actually wanted that message to come out. Here's how Chip Towers said that.
I think he's probably glad that it got mentioned on TV, that there's going to be even more attention on it. And, you know, that is standing operating procedure. They do that every week. There's always cut-ups. Auburn did the same thing as well, you know. I don't think the referees missed any calls on Georgia that day, but if they did, Gus Malzahn and his staff sent in a tape. They do it every week.
So when Chip said that, I didn't necessarily know what to think about it at first, but I'm actually inclined to believe him. Yeah. This is all a part of a level of gamesmanship on the part of Kirby Smart. Can I play one more clip for you that I think kind of proves this?
Let's do it.
Smart was asked about this on Monday. Smart, who never no comments anything. Now, he avoids comments plenty, but he never says no comment. But on this specific question, he does drop a very terse, dramatic no comment. Listen to this.
Coach, it was brought up over the weekend that the last time you guys faced each other, you felt that a few calls were missed, that you sent them in to the league, primarily defensive holding. Is that something you do every week, or did you just feel like they were so egregious that they needed to be brought up?
Yeah, no comment.
So all of this feels like a big theatrical, dramatic game on Kirby Smart's part. Everybody's sending these calls and these mistaken officiating decisions to the league office every single week, but Kirby wants his on the CBS broadcast so he can no comment it on Monday so that it sort of exists in the atmosphere before this game to maybe plant a seed with the officials. Is that what's going on here?
Possibly so. Possibly so. I do have to admit, though, I think if that is his angle, that's probably fallen on deaf ears because you can do all you want to, but the fact of the matter is some of those pass interference or holding calls in the secondary, they're split second anyways. These referees are reacting to what they're seeing in front of them. They're not thinking, oh, I remember that press conference this past weekend. We better not call as many flags or need to call more flags during this game. Maybe it is. Maybe there's a level of gamesmanship, and I would not put that past Kirby Smart. I think he knows the ins and the outs of the SEC, knows the ins and the outs of the championship games, and how everything's on a little bit bigger stage, knows what CBS will bring to him if he does lead that out there. But I just don't, in the end, feel like it has any effect on how it's called.
But here's the thing, though. I'm a good bit older than you. I remember this probably better than you did. Think back to the 1996 national championship game. It was a rematch also between Florida and Florida State.
Yeah.
And Steve Spurrier felt like that the Florida State pass rushers were hitting his quarterback late, hitting him late, planted that seed leading up to that game. Now, you had a lot more build-up to the Sugar Bowl that year than you do the 1 week before the SEC championship. A lot of people tell you that worked to Spurrier's advantage, and difference in officiating allowed Florida to win that game and hoist a national championship trophy. I know you have to reach pretty deep in the past to find a similar circumstance like that, but I mean, officials are humans. Even if it's a knee-jerk sort of blink type decision, it's still humans making the decision, and their preconceived notions do impact the decisions they make. So I think this is a semi-smart move on Kirby Smart's part, no pun intended?
Yeah. Listen, I agree with you. I think any edge you can get if you're Kirby Smart, that's what you're reaching for. Maybe one of the officials did hear a little bit of that. Maybe they were watching the CBS broadcast last week and they think in the back of their head, this is not something that we're going to be able to do this weekend. But to me, it kind of falls on deaf ears, like I said. If Kirby Smart's trying to do that, maybe they get one more call than they did, a couple of weeks ago. I would be shocked either way. Listen, there's enough there's enough stuff going on with officiating right now where you can question a lot of their calls. I don't know if you can trace it back to the fact that Kirby Smart had some comments to Gary Danielson.
So, by the way, in the comments section, a lot of y'all are talking about the situation with Florida and Justin Fields, the 5-star quarterback, the UJ commit. Coming up in a couple minutes, we're actually going to get into that on the show. So continue y'all's debate back and forth between the Dog fans and the Gator fans. We'll tell you the latest on Fields and what's going on between him and Florida. We'll do that coming up here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Before that, though, let me combine my two favorite things in the world into one topic here for item number 6. Pro wrestling and college football, because apparently last night, I didn't realize this, but Monday Night Raw, the big show on USA, was in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Right.
And during one of the matches, the fans, and this happens in wrestling arenas a lot, they kind of get going into the topic. Listen during this WWE match. We have a couple different video angles of this. This WWE match, the fans start to chant "Fire Curry" during the WWE match. This is an amazing video. Watch this.
Disqualifications, fatal 4-way rules. One's opponent at the moment, Noam Dar, really looking to make his mark in the cruiserweight division. Maybe the most technically gifted superstar in the entire cruiserweight roster.
That's the official broadcast footage. Somebody also had video of his own cell phone from within the arena. We have a little bit of that video as well. I want you to watch the folks participating in this. Watch this. I like how casual this one guy is. He's sort of casually clapping right along. So if you're the AD and this is what's going on, they're chanting "Fire Curry" at the WWE event. It's hard to come back from that, is it not?
Well, it's definitely it's hard to come back from. It's not this. It's what happened Sunday. I mean, the entire college football world was on fire with what was happening with the Tennessee Vols fan base, and I think that's what's really tough to come back from. This right now, I don't think John Curry's paying any attention to this. I mean, he's kind of, to me right now, got the fire under his butt that he should have had for the last few weeks. Now he's he's being a reactionary type of AD where he's going, oh man, everybody's really mad. Let me make sure I reach out and get $8 million out to Mike Gundy. Guess what? You should have been doing that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You should have fired Butch a long time ago as well. So I think that this is kind of past the point to where the chaining even matters. I think John Curry, I have to feel like his fate's been sealed. I know that a lot of people are saying if he hires Mike Gundy, that can save him. It's a little bit of a Hail Mary for his career. But even if he does, and last past this, Mike Gundy's going to have to win a national title in the next couple of years to save John Curry's job.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right about that. And I love the coaching search, soap opera, and drama. I mean, I just am obsessed with it. And I thought it was very telling that David Cutcliffe, a source close to him, revealed that he had been offered the Tennessee job and turned it down. That's the kind of thing that only comes out as a way of, I think, making Tennessee look bad here. There's nothing to gain for Cutcliffe for saying he was offered the job. And to me, that's a red flag if I'm a Vols fan, because Cutcliffe is close to Peyton Manning and Philip Fulmer. Does the report about Cutcliffe indicate that somehow Fulmer and Manning aren't close enough to this Tennessee coaching search, that a guy that's close to them is basically making John Curry look bad here? I know I'm connecting a lot of dots when I say that, but these are the questions that are fair to ask with the Tennessee situation, given what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely fair to ask. I would take the opposite approach and say, you know what, maybe this was his message to the Duke people, to the Duke players, to the Duke fans. Everybody's recruiting right now to say, you know what, I'm going to stay here for quite some time. Duke ain't got no recruits. Well, neither does Tennessee right now when you talk about people jumping off ship with him. So I think it's fair to draw that comparison and say, you know what, David Cutcliffe could have really done Peyton Manning and Philip Fulmer, a solid and kind of kept his name out of the news. But I don't think he was pulling the strings on this, and even if he did, like I said, I think it goes back to his Duke ties.
All right, Jermaine Clardy asked, what's the latest on the Mississippi State coaching search? We're going to do some of these rumors here for a lot of these schools kind of all together here for item number 7. Before I do that, though, let me remind you that my name is Brandon Adams. That's Mike Johnson. This is AT&T SEC Country Live. AT&T, proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. I'll also tell you, come out and join us this Friday night, special AT&T SEC Country Live broadcast. Hooters downtown Atlanta, Peachtree Street, Georgia fans, Auburn fans, SEC fans, anybody that can get into Atlanta that day, this is going to be a really fun night for AT&T SEC Country Live. Some of the folks we talk to in this comment section every day, going to get a chance to talk in person. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, show up, maybe even share a beer. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on the air right now, but it's going to be a good night for
we have no FCC. Facebook Live is like the Wild West. There's no FCC.
I just know I'm not the boss, by God. I answer to somebody else.
I understand that. Also, speaking of Hooters, if you're looking for a great meal this weekend while you're watching some of these games, how about this great offer from Hooters? You get $5 off your to-go order of $25 or more, but you got to use the promo code SEC Fans. This is online to-go only. SEC Fans, the promo code. $5 off your order of $25 or more at Hooters.com. You can get some more information on that. All right, item number 7. Let's knock out a lot of this coaching stuff. Let me start with the Texas A&M stuff. I'm a big believer that Jimbo Fisher, I think, is going to take the Texas A&M job.
Yep.
One of the guys that thinks that as well is David Pollack, apparently from ESPN, at least laying out some reasons why this is likely to happen or could be a strong possibility of happening. Here's what the ESPN analyst said on a recent broadcast, part of what he said about why Fisher to Texas A&M makes some sense.
Why on earth would you leave Florida State with a program you've built? Here's a couple reasons why. He built this program. Look at this year, one bad year. You've seen the criticism. You've seen how much it's ticked him off. So when you go to a new job, here's what's going to happen for Jimbo Fisher. He's going to get a 5-year contract for a lot more money. Congratulations. You know what else starts over? His clock as a coach starts over. He starts over. He plays a new game. At FSU, he's in the third quarter. He's done a heck of a job. They've done 8 consecutive top 25s, 4 top 10 finishes. His career now starts over. He has a bad year. He's not getting called to get fired.
I think that everything he says there is 1,000% true. It's exactly what I believe. More job security, more money. It's a place you can win. Now, A&M hasn't won, but that makes the winning you do there all the much better because they haven't experienced that before. But there's access to talent. The roster's already pretty talented, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a lot better than a lot of SEC situations. This is a good job to take. I think Jimbo Fisher would win there. I think Florida State would be worse without him.
Yeah, it's a good job, and I don't think the timing has ever been more right. I think that when David Pollack talks about the scrutiny that Jimbo's got and how everybody's kind of been on his case for the down year that FSU has had, I think there's a lot to point in that direction. Jimbo Fisher, to me, strikes me as that good old Southern boy. You know, he's got the hat that's all messed up on his head. His polo is always being jerked around everywhere. He has that kind of Southern swing. Florida State fans, they are in the South, but for the most part, they're not really that good old boy type of fan, type of college football fan. They've been on his case pretty good this year.
Brandon Vernon in the comment section says, how about donations for Mike Johnson to Pancake Brandon? Why are we going to go down that road? What have I done to get pancakes?
I'm taking them. Listen, y'all meet me at Hooters Friday night, and if we can get enough up, we'll have the match out there on Peachtree Street.
You've got it all wrong. I eat pancakes. I don't get pancakes. I eat pancakes.
Yeah, I'm just telling you right now that if we can get the pot high enough, we might can get that done.
Good gracious alive. Y'all don't see me sprawled out and down.
I've been wanting to do it anyways, man. I've been wanting to do it anyway.
Time, that actually is true. All right, while we're on this Texas A&M subject, let me hit a few more of these as well. We've seen a lot of names popping up for the Mississippi State, the Arkansas jobs. Can we hit a little bit of this? Somebody in the comment section earlier was talking about Mike Leach. Mike Leach is another one of these goofballs from out west. I don't want these guys in the SEC. I don't think they'd be successful here. If you gave me the choice of Mike Norvell, a real coach, doing some real things at Memphis, or this cartoon character in Pullman, Washington, Mike Leach, Norvell to Arkansas is the better hire.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that Norvell is probably going to, be the favorite when you talk about this Arkansas conversation. To me, I think that, a lot of people are looking at Jeff Brom up at Purdue. I think that he kind of falls back into this category of his name has come up a ton. Maybe the Arkansas boosters, by the way, they're the guys calling the shot.
Yeah.
Arkansas booster can come up with some of that money and get somebody looking in that direction. For Mississippi State, I look another way as well. Jeremy Pruitt's name has come up a ton as a guy who's been indicated in and around this coaching search for Mississippi State. I would not be shocked. I think that's a good fit if you can find a guy like Jeremy Pruitt and plug him in.
There have been these reports as of late, though, about this offensive coordinator up there at Penn State, Moorhead's his last name. This is just maybe my bias show. I mean, this is one of those things where I'm just maybe biased. I just may be lacking objectivity here because in addition to me being an SEC guy, I'd want the SEC coach at Mississippi State if I was a Bulldogs fan. Pruitt's also a guy that worked at Georgia, who I thought, while he had some personal issues with some of the people he worked with, I thought he was a great coach and a terrific recruiter. I can't imagine the Penn State offensive coordinator being a better hire for Mississippi State than Jeremy Pruitt. But as I said, there's a chance I'm just too biased on
Well, to me, I go back to Jeremy Pruitt's recruiting prowess. I mean, this guy is an incredible recruiter. When you talk about the things he's done at Alabama, at Florida State, at Georgia, he's been able to recruit the Southeast. Bringing a guy from Penn State that really doesn't have the track record of being able to recruit guys down in the South, I think that'd be a mistake on Mississippi State's part. I'll tell you a guy right now that I thought would come up in this conversation that hasn't. Jeff Collins. This was a guy who was the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, went to Florida, now is at Temple at the head coach. I thought Jeff Collins would get a look from a lot of these Mississippi State people. I haven't even heard his name mentioned.
That's a really interesting thing to think about. All right, let me move on to item number 8 here for a moment, because y'all have been on this comment section all day long. Dan Mullen making quick work here apparently on the recruiting trail, trying to make some inroads with the 5-star quarterback, the Georgia commit, Justin Fields. Number 1 player in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Team ranking. He also hails from the state of Georgia, in Kennesaw, Georgia. Goes to Harrison High School. Broken finger, didn't get a chance to finish his senior season, but the tape already exists on Fields. He's a terrific player. Here is why the conversation gets started initially, because if you look on Fields' Twitter profile, you see some activity on his part. He's followed some folks recently. Gators football, Dan Mullen, somebody named Gina Lynn. But
Justin Sky's mom. No, Gina,
okay, yeah.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, but that's in the handle.
Either way, that's who he's following. Dan Mullen, the Florida coach, right there in the heels of Mullen taking the Florida job. Now, listen, we're going to talk a lot about recruiting in the next few weeks. One of the main sort of 10 commandments of recruiting is Twitter don't mean nothing when it comes to recruiting.
No.
But that's the second time on the show I've used bad grammar, but I do that to make a point. Twitter doesn't mean anything when it comes to recruiting typically, but do you read anything into Fields following Mullen the day that Mullen gets the Florida job?
I actually do, and here's the reason why. Why wasn't he already following Florida? You know what I mean? Like, obviously he's a Georgia commit, he's a Georgia guy, but the fact that Dan Mullen gets his job right now, and by everything I've heard today, Dan Mullen is visiting Justin Fields tonight, an in-home visit. I think that signals just, if nothing else, that maybe he has a little bit of piqued interest right now in this Florida program and wants to know what Dan Mullen has to say to him.
Yeah, I'll read to you from Zach Alberverdi here. Nation's #1 overall recruit's going to receive a visit Tuesday from Dan Mullen. New Florida coach plans to see Justin Fields. Fields was targeted heavily by the previous Florida staff, but the coach has stopped recruiting him after landing a commitment from Matt Corral in July. So that is what's going on there, according to Zach Alberverdi from SECCountry.com. And I'm of the belief that this is probably leading nowhere. Now, my question would be is, why isn't he trying to solidify things with Matt Corral, a quarterback that he already has, who himself was, depending on which recruiting service you use, either a 5-star himself or a very high 4-star.
Right.
That's the part of this that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I completely agree. That was kind of my first reaction. Why is this guy not flying to see the quarterback he already has committed? Obviously, if you're Dan Mullen right now, the system you run, you'd love to have a dual-threat quarterback. Justin Fields being the #1 recruit in the country, he's going to get your attention. But why not get the guy you already have in-house that has been committed to that university for a while? Matt Corral, very good quarterback. He tweeted earlier today, you know what, it's a business and you have to, something like you have to make business decisions sometimes. I guess sometime he's going to have to make a business decision to decide if he wants to follow Dan Mullen to Florida too.
And listen, Corral did take the official visit to Alabama, but folks, Matt Corral's not going to Alabama. Alabama wants Emory Jones, the quarterback that's currently committed to Ohio State. There's a lot of these moving parts right now, and Alabama thinks it's getting Emory Jones. I don't think they'd take the commitment from Matt Corral. That's just my opinion. So Corral's in a tough spot here. Wants to play in the SEC, having a hard time finding that SEC school that can take him. Maybe it's a different school.
Yeah, it's tough to be in Matt Corral's shoes right now, because here's a guy that I think he said earlier in the recruiting process, you commit to a school and not to a coach. And when Jim McElwain goes down, everybody kind of holds their breath and says, what is Matt Corral going to do? Guess what? Still committed to Florida. And so here's a guy who wants to be in Gainesville, might be on the outside looking in, though. That's the nature of the beast these days with the recruiting limits, the 25 scholarship limits every year, that, you know what, you can't take everybody who wants to come. If Justin Fields wants to go to Florida, I understand it.
Let me give you one quote here from, it's from Justin Fields. Kip Adams, 24/7 Sports gets it. He says, I don't really have a great relationship with Coach Mullen, but seeing his past quarterback experience, the troubles Florida has had at the position, he should be able to help them get back to where they were with Tim Tebow. I know he's coached Dak Prescott, Alex Smith, and I hear he's a pretty good quarterback coach. I think he'll turn Florida around to make them a successful program. So Florida fans, I love you to death, but if you think of this quote from Justin Fields as indication that he's going to change his long-standing commitment to Georgia because of a coach that he apparently just read his bio off Wikipedia, that feels like wishful thinking.
Well, and it probably is, but here's the thing. Dan Mullen has not given his pitch to Justin Fields yet. That could all change after tonight when Dan Mullen makes makes his in-home visit. He can sell Justin Fields on the fact that Jake Fromm is a young quarterback that is the savior at Georgia right now, and Florida is the one that really, really needs Justin Fields. Yes, it'd be nice to go there and compete and be a part of that Kirby Smart team, but if he can sell Justin Fields tonight on the fact that he would be the face of that program for the next 4 years, I would expect Justin Fields to take a really hard look.
If I'm a Florida fan, I'm not optimistic about Justin Fields, but here's what I am optimistic about while we're on the subject of Florida recruiting. I know that Ollie Conley, who I know you like, Ollie, he does great work for us here at SECcountry.com. His tweet today about the situation at Florida, I just think this speaks volumes as to what Gators may be getting with Dan Mullen. He says that Mississippi State's average recruiting class during the Dan Mullen era was 27th. No top 15 classes. Florida's during that same time span, 9th, with only one class outside the top 15. Records during that span, Mississippi State 69-46, Florida 73-42. Ollie says Mullen's going to win big with the Gators. I do think those numbers speak for themselves. Getting almost as many wins with a lot less overall talent shows you what kind of on-field coach Mullen is, and he's going to get better recruits just based on the virtue of the fact that he's recruiting at Florida as opposed to Mississippi State. I don't think Justin Fields is going to happen, Florida fans, but I do think that Dan Mullen is going to get some recruits, and I think he's going to be a good coach for the Gators.
I completely agree. And listen, one of the things with Dan Mullen is where are you going to get all the speed you're going to need on defense and on offense at Mississippi State? I think that's one of the things he's lacked, is a ton of speed around the football field. He's going to have that at Florida. It's hard not to have speed when you're coaching and recruiting to a place like Florida. That's why I think it would be smart for Justin Fields to at least take a look. You see what Georgia is right now. They're going to have to really change their offense completely if Justin Fields is going to become the guy. If I'm Justin Fields right now, I'm looking at track records as far as what you do with quarterbacks and who's getting in the NFL. I'm taking a long, hard look at Mullen. I'm just telling you.
Willie Gray says, I hope that Kirby shows up at the same time for dinner at Fields' house. That's kind of a funny line from a Georgia fan there. Cliff Nelson also bringing up Matt Canada. If he stays, what might happen with the LSU quarterback situation next year?
Yeah.
You and I were talking before the show. We're actually going to get into the LSU situation a good bit tomorrow and what may be going on here with Matt Canada. Can LSU hold on to its offensive coordinator for second year? That's a subject we're going to talk about a good bit tomorrow.
I'm actually shocked that his name hasn't come up more for head coaching jobs, because I feel like he's done a pretty good job this year. When you talk about how he's worked with Danny Etling, how he's kind of molded this LSU offense. I knew it took a while to kind of get it started early on in the year, but I think he's done a good job. I expected him and Dave Aranda both to come up for some of these head coaching spots. Just hasn't happened. I don't know what Dave Aranda has to do to get his name in the coaching ring ahead of some of these other guys, but two very quality coaches, and LSU is going to take a hit if they do have to lose either one of them.
Let me move on to item number 9, our AT&T SEC Country Line First and 10 list. Back to the SEC Championship game on Saturday here just for a moment. And one of the interesting offensive wrinkles that Auburn put on display against Alabama, will there be more of this against Georgia on Saturday? Saban kind of admitted, at least to a certain extent, in his post-game press conference after the Iron Bowl, that he may have been a little surprised by the number of planned runs that Auburn had for quarterback Jared Stidham. Here's how Saban said that Saturday night.
Well, we knew he was very athletic, and we certainly respected him as a runner. That's not something that they've done a lot, but we did respect his ability to scramble and extend plays. He did make a couple really, good runs. He pulled the ball, and when Hootie got hurt, got cut on the zone option and ran a quarterback draw for a big first down. So we have a lot of respect for the guy. He's really, really a good player. Best quarterback we played against all year.
Kenneth Hall says Stidham's going to run if it's there. Auburn's offense is literally taking whatever the defense is giving. Well, in terms of the defense giving Stidham that opportunity, Kirby Smart's also aware that if it's there, Stidham's going to use that. Here's what Kirby said on the same subject.
They got a quarterback who, don't mistake him for a runner, because he can run the ball when you least expect it. They had several designed runs for him against Alabama. When you start running the quarterback, it creates a really tough dynamic.
I mean, listen, you know how I feel about Jared Stidham. I think he's the SEC's top quarterback. I think he proved that on Saturday in the Iron Bowl. But with the unknown status of Carrion Johnson, do you expect to see more of Stidham's legs on Saturday, that he'll do more than just throw it, do more than just facilitate other running plays? He's actually going to run some more himself.
I think it's possible. I think you have to be careful right now if you are Chip Lindsey and Gus Malzahn that I don't think your backup option is near as good as your starting option. So you have to be careful about getting some of those hits on Jared Stidham. And by the way, his legs aren't what has won you most of these games. It's been his arm. So I think you try to take those hits off of him if you can. Maybe you design an extra one. Listen, maybe there comes a third down later in the game that is a big play, and maybe you do, say, well, you know what, Jarrett Stidham, we've been really kind of keeping things off of you. Now is the time you have to turn on the Jets. Listen, he had 51 rushing yards against Alabama. That's the same as Damian Harris did in the Iron Bowl. So he definitely has the athleticism to kind of get upfield and make some of these plays. I just don't know if they're going to be designed. I think that you'll probably see it. I don't know that you're going to see the design plays, at least not early on until you need them.
Here's my point about this, though, that it's a legitimate talking point. It's a legitimate thing to think about. And what I believe that makes Auburn so tough to stop. Now, I think that Georgia is going to play much better this time than it did the first time around against Auburn. But what makes Auburn so tough to stop is there are all these sort of like legitimate issues. Stidham running, that's a legitimate issue. The jet sweeps, the runs up the middle, respecting the deep throws. All of these are the kinds of things that you can't disregard. And what makes stopping anything for Auburn difficult is you have to think about everything at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And it's kind of the tactic. When we were talking early in the year and Kirby Smart was in the media, not naming Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason the starter, kind of going back and forth, leaving things out on a limb. We've heard from Nick Saban saying, he's not going to give out game plans and such. This is just another thing for Georgia and Kirby Smart to have to coach against, to have to get one of those reps in practice and say, you know what, there is a good chance that Jarrett Stidham, keeps this ball and goes around the corner. A lot of the times when we've looked at this offense this year, it's been the fake handoff and Jarrett Stidham kind of gets it out wide to one of his wideouts and they make a play. I'm just telling you, if there's a big third down or fourth down late in the game, Jarrett Stidham could have the ball in his hands, and Georgia has to be careful. Watch for that.
Let me quickly remind you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Great to have you listen to the program today. Join us this Friday, 7 p.m., special broadcast of AT&T SEC Country Live. The Hooters downtown Atlanta. We'll be there at 7 p.m., not normally on Fridays, not normally in the evening, but we'll look forward to seeing you at 7 p.m. on Friday night for our big look ahead to the next day and the championship game on Saturday. And by the way, speaking of that game, if you're looking forward to some great food while you watch it at your home, well, how about Hooters to go here? Their special offer, $5 off your order of $25 or more. But you got to use the promo code SECFans. It's online, to go only. Hooters.com for more information. Use that promo code SECFans. All right, let me go back to Tennessee here for a moment for item number 10. And I thought that Jarrett Garantano's dad, James Garantano, had a pretty interesting tweet. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of debate this and kind of look at this and pay attention to it. Garantano was unhappy with the intense response from Tennessee fans about the Greg Schiano hire. What he writes is, I have a fair question for all the Vol fans protested the Schiano hire. When our AD hires our next head coach, and if all of you like the hire, are the players allowed to protest and say that's not who they wanted? Get ready, because Pandora's box just got open. You're a former player, so your opinion on this matters actually a lot more than mine does, although I'm going to make mine just as loudly as you make yours.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about the dad of a player saying that about the idea of a player protest?
You know that I always lean towards the players in these circumstances, but just going back to what you just said, that my opinion matters more than maybe yours, 'cause in this situation, I don't think it does. And I think that's where I've kind of looked at James Garantano and I'm like, dude, shut up. I mean, what are you talking about? Your kid starts 6 games at quarterback for Tennessee, and you think that the fans that have been there for 30, 40, and 50 years don't deserve to have a voice bigger than yours? To me, that's a joke. It's hey, listen, do the players get to have a voice in this? This is about Vol fanhood for forever. This is about who's going to be the coach when your kid leaves the program. So don't tell me about your son needing a voice in this hire. I don't believe that.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think Garantano individually has any leverage to pick the next Tennessee coach. He's not a good enough player. I think, though, what he would say, though, is if he were here, is he's not talking about just his son. He's talking about if the entire team felt strongly about a coach. And I would argue that if the entire team felt that strongly and John Curry went the other direction, he would be just as tone deaf in that regard as he is in this regard with the Tennessee fans. Now, there is something about when tens upon tens of thousands of people feel one way. It's a little heftier than 85 scholarship football players. That's just basic math. But, Curry's issue here is that he did not take the temperature of Vols fans before he made this hire. He didn't level set expectations for them before this went down. I mean, this is not the Tennessee fans' fault. Greg Schiano and the mess that's been created here is not the Tennessee fans' fault, no matter how much the blue blood media wants to blame them for it. This is John Curry's fault for not managing the public relations.
And I agree. And I think that you do have to take the temperature of the fan base, the locker room, all that being said. When I look at James Garantano's, I think he's just as tone deaf as John Curry is. I think that when you look at it, and you listen, by the way, since when is Greg Schiano going to come in and make your son any better at quarterback? Yes, he's going to be a great, he's going to be a great. Yeah, I think he's tone deaf. I think the tweet he put out before that said his coaching list had been Chip Kelly, Dan Mullen, and Scott Frost. Well, guess what? None of those guys gave that job a second look. They really didn't, and that hurts me to say, but that just goes to show you that he's just as tone deaf as John Curry probably. And I'm all about the players and the players having a say. I think they definitely deserve that. But in this instance, when you look at that Tennessee Vols fan base and how much they've had to endure through the last 3 head coaches, Jared Garantano and his feelings to me don't matter.
Lane Kiffin will make an appearance for our Champion of Life here in a moment. Before that, let me remind you, time for our AT&T Look Ahead, brought to you by our proud sponsor, AT&T, entertainment your way. And one thing to be looking ahead to, at least for tonight, college football playoff rankings come out again this evening at 7 p.m. We shared some of our thoughts on this earlier in the show. I don't think this is much of a harbinger of what's going to happen on Sunday. If anything, I'm curious to see how much those Pac-12 teams kind of crawl up, because it's actually the Pac-12 that may be a bigger problem for Alabama than Ohio State.
Yeah, it's possible. I do want to see where Alabama is ranked in comparison to Ohio State and USC and a TCU team. Where do those teams all kind of fall out? If they're 4 apart right now and Alabama's 4 spots ahead of Ohio State, it's going to be a tough ground to make up. But that's what we're waiting on tonight.
All right, let's finish our show the way we always do with our Champion of Life. And I'm going to have to let you tell me this. I can't decide if this is funny or not. And you know that I think Kiffin is generally pretty funny. Lane Kiffin, I think, is usually a pretty entertaining guy, especially on social media. But is he going to the same well too much now? Let me show you a couple of examples. This is just from today, by the way. Here's the first one. So this person kind of puts it out there. This, by the way, is a fake tweet. Saban didn't really say that. But this whole idea about how his team should be in the college football playoff and saying the opposite of that in 2016. Kiffin says, can you rat poison yourself? So kind of going back down the rat poison line again there. And then later on the day on Twitter, he does the same thing again, trying to make the same rat poison joke. Said, just spoke to our team after a great practice, begged them not to take the bait. Rat poison comes in different forms. He's made this rat poison joke like a half dozen times at least. Now, I don't mind the Photoshop here of the owl. That's what FAU is, with the football on the rat trap. I don't mind the Photoshop here, but how many times can you make the same rat poison joke?
Yeah, to me, it's kind of jumped the shark a little bit. Lane Kiffin, by the way, a lot of his tweets that he's putting out now, it's rat poison, and then it's tag Paul Feinbaum, it's tag Colin Cowherd. It's like, you're just begging for attention at this point. I think a lot of fans feel the same way. It's almost like this coaching silly season is almost on the edge of where we're kind of getting past it, and Lane Kiffin's name isn't coming up anymore, and it's like, we're just tired of hearing from him.
Well, I will say this. I know we got to go. We're so late. The tweet that Kiffin sent today that was funny, that video we played earlier of the wrestlers wrestling and they're chanting the fire Curry? He retweets that with just a little subhead that says, nice drop kick. Like, that's funny.
Yeah.
Now that's
the witty Lane Kiffin that comes out. There's nothing witty to me about the rat poison.
All right, we're so late. Listen to the podcast. You can hear the full 67-minute version of the show on iTunes. We'd love to have you check that out. Also, give us a rating and review. Share the show with your friends on Facebook. Let them know we're talking about the SEC each and every day here on AT&T SEC Country Live. We'll see you tonight, 7 p.m. as we'll break the college football playoff rankings with you live from the SEC Country Facebook page. Watch us for that, and then back here again at 3 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow for another episode of AT&T SEC Country Live. Y'all have a great day.